When Daniel moved into the old apartment building on Crestwood Avenue, the first thing he noticed was the staircase. It stood in the center of the building, like a tall spiral of concrete and metal. Every apartment floor connected to it. The mailboxes were beside it, and the elevator was built right next to it. Most people used the elevator, but Daniel preferred the stairs. They were quieter, and somehow the building felt older when you used them. The building had 10 floors. At least. That's what the brochure said. And that's what the elevator button showed, 1 through 10. Nothing more. Daniel lived on the 6th floor. So most days he climbed the stairs. For exercise. It was a simple routine. Walk up the flights, reach his floor. Go. Inside. Everything was normal for the first few weeks. Until one night. Daniel had returned home late from work. The hallway was quiet. The elevator was out of service. A small yellow sign hung on the door. Out of OR, Daniel sighed and turned toward the staircase. No problem, he muttered. 6 floors. The stairwell lights were dim, but working. Old fluorescent bulbs humming softly above the concrete steps. Daniel started, climbing. 1 floor. 2 floors. 3. When he reached the 6th floor, he stopped. Something felt strange. The door that normally led to the hallway was missing. Daniel stared at the wall, where the door should have been. There was only concrete. That's weird, he said quietly. He looked up the stairs. Then back down. Maybe he had. MICOUNTED. He walked down 1 flight. The door on the 5th floor was there, exactly where it should be. Daniel frowned. Then he walked back up again. 6th floor. Still no door. Only a blank concrete wall where the hallway entrance should have been. Daniel stood there for a moment. Confused. Then he noticed something else. The staircase continued upward. That wasn't unusual. Except for one thing. The building only had 10 floors, and Daniel was already on the 6th. But the stairs above him stretched far higher than 4 more floors. Much higher. They disappeared into darkness above the stairwell lights. Daniel felt a small chill. Maybe there's a maintenance level, he said to himself. Curiosity pushed him upward. He climbed 1 more floor. Then another. When he reached the next landing, he stopped again. The sign on the wall read, Floor 11. Daniel stared at it. Because the building didn't have an 11th floor. Daniel stood on the landing, staring at the metal sign on the wall. Floor 11. The numbers were painted in black on a small white plate. It looked old, but not ancient. Just like the other floor signs in the building. That doesn't make sense, Daniel whispered. The building had only 10 floors. He had seen the building plans when he signed. The lease. 10 floors. Nothing above them except the roof. Daniel turned around and looked down the stairwell. The floors below him were still visible. The dim fluorescent lights illuminated the landings. 6th floor. 5th. 4th. Everything looked normal down there. But above him, the staircase continued. Higher and higher, disappearing into shadow. Daniel hesitated. Then curiosity pushed him forward again. He climbed another flight of stairs. The sound of his footsteps echoed softly through the empty stairwell. When he reached the next landing, he slowed down. The wall sign read, Floor 12. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Okay, that's definitely not right. He tried the door beside the sign. The metal handle turned easily. The door opened. Daniel stepped into the hallway and immediately noticed something strange. The hallway looked similar to the other floors. Same layout. Same carpet. Same ceiling lights. But everything looked older. Much older. The carpet was faded. The paint on the walls was peeling. Some of the ceiling lights flickered weakly. Daniel walked slowly down the hallway. The apartment doors were there. Just like the other floors. But the numbers looked different. Instead of modern metal plates, the numbers were painted directly on the doors. Black paint. Old-fashioned style. Apartment 1203. Apartment 1204. Apartment 1205. Daniel knocked on one of the doors. just to see if anyone lived there. No answer. He tried another door. Same result. The entire floor was silent, completely empty. Daniel walked back toward the stairwell. Something about the place made him uneasy, like he was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. When he reached the stairwell door, he paused, because the staircase above him looked different now. The lights were dimmer. The concrete looked cracked and older, like the stairwell itself was aging the higher he climbed. Daniel looked down the stairs again. The lower floors still looked normal. Clean. Well-lit. But the upper staircase looked like it belonged to a much older building. Daniel felt a strange mixture of fear and curiosity. If this is the 12th floor, he said quietly, how high does this staircase go? He started climbing again, and after another flight of stairs, he saw the next landing sign. Floor 30, but this time, the door on the landing was slightly open, and faint light was coming from the hallway beyond it. Daniel stopped a few steps below the landing. The sign on the wall clearly read, Floor 13. The metal plate looked older than the others, slightly bent at the edges, but that wasn't what made Daniel uneasy. The door to the hallway was already open. Just slightly. And warm light spilled out into the stairwell. Daniel stood there for a moment, listening. The stairwell was silent. No footsteps. No voices. Nothing. Slowly, he walked up the last few steps. The door creaked softly when he pushed it open further. The hallway inside looked different from the floor below. Very different. The carpet wasn't faded. The lights weren't flickering. Everything looked normal. In fact, it looked newer than the rest of the building. Daniel stepped inside. The hallway stretched in both directions. Apartment doors lined the walls. Soft yellow lights glowed in the ceiling. And then Daniel noticed something strange. He could hear a television somewhere. A faint sound of voices coming from one of the apartments. He froze, because the 12th floor had been completely empty. But this one sounded occupied. Daniel walked slowly down the hallway. The television sound became clearer. It was coming from apartment 1307. The door to the apartment was slightly open. Just enough for light to spill into the hallway. Daniel hesitated. Then he gently knocked. No answer, but the television continued playing inside. Hello? Daniel called. Still nothing. The door slowly creaked open further as Daniel pushed it. The apartment inside looked normal. A small living room. A couch, a lamp beside it, and the television playing quietly on a table. But no one was there. Daniel stepped inside. The television showed an old news broadcast. The kind that looked like it came from years ago. The colors were slightly faded. The screen quality looked older. Daniel frowned. Is this some kind of storage unit? He wondered. Then something on the news broadcast caught his attention. The news anchor was talking about an apartment building fire. Daniel walked closer to the television, trying to hear better. The reporter stood outside a building surrounded by emergency lights. Fire trucks. Police cars. People standing behind barricades. Daniel's heart skipped, because the building behind the reporter looked exactly like the one he lived in. The reporter continued speaking. The fire started late last night on the upper floors of the Crestwood Apartments. Daniel felt a chill run down his back. Then the reporter said something that made him freeze completely. Most of the damage appears to have occurred on floors 11 through 13. Daniel slowly stepped backward, looking around the apartment again. The furniture. The television. The hallway outside. Everything suddenly felt wrong, like he wasn't just on a higher floor. He was standing inside a moment from the past. And then Daniel heard something in the hallway. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Walking toward the apartment door. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the apartment. The television continued playing behind him, the reporter's voice echoing softly through the room. But Daniel wasn't listening anymore. He was focused on the sound coming from the hallway. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Getting closer to the open apartment door. Daniel moved quietly toward the entrance. His heart was beating faster now. He leaned slightly toward the doorway and looked into the hallway. At first, he saw nothing. Just a long corridor under soft yellow lights. Apartment doors lined both sides of the hall. Everything looked calm. Then someone turned the corner at the far end of the hallway. A man. He wore dark clothing that looked slightly outdated. A long coat and simple shoes. The kind of style Daniel had seen in old photos. The man walked slowly down the corridor, like he had somewhere specific to go. Daniel stepped back slightly into the apartment, but the man had already seen him. They locked eyes. The man stopped walking. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the man looked at the open apartment door behind Daniel. At the television still playing the old news report. "You shouldn't stay here too long," the man said quietly. Daniel blinked. "What?" The man stepped closer. His expression was calm, but there was something tired in his eyes. "These floors don't belong to the present anymore." Daniel felt a chill. "You mean the fire?" The man nodded. Double quotes. "It happened years ago." Daniel looked down the hallway. "But this place looks normal." The man glanced around the corridor. "It always does." For a while, Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" The man pointed toward the stairwell door at the end of the hallway. "The staircase shows what used to be here." Daniel slowly understood. The empty 12th floor. The occupied 13th floor. The old news broadcast. The staircase wasn't just going higher. It was going through different moments in the building's history. Daniel looked toward the stairwell again. "Does it stop somewhere?" The man gave a quiet, uncertain smile. "No one has found the top." Daniel felt both fear and curiosity pulling at him. "What happens if you keep going up?" he asked. The man looked toward the stairs. Then back at Daniel. "You see the parts of the building that no longer exist." The hallway lights flickered suddenly. For a moment, the corridor looked different. Older. Smoke stained. Like it had just survived a fire. Then it returned to normal. Again, the man looked uneasy. "Now, you should go back downstairs." Daniel hesitated. "But what about you?" The man glanced down the hallway again. "I'm still looking." "For what?" The man answered quietly. "For the floor where I left." Daniel looked toward the stairwell door. The staircase above it disappeared into darkness. And for the first time, Daniel noticed something strange. There were more stairs above the 13th floor. Many more. Daniel stood in the hallway of the 13th floor, staring at the stairwell door. Beyond it, the staircase continued upward into darkness. More floors. More landings. More places that shouldn't exist. The man in the hallway watched him carefully. "You're thinking about going up?" he said. Daniel nodded slowly. "I just want to see where it ends." The man sighed. "That's what everyone says." Daniel frowned. "Everyone?" The man gestured toward the stairwell. "People who find these floors. They always want to know what's above." Daniel looked again at the staircase door. The curiosity inside him was stronger than the fear. "Did you go higher?" Daniel asked. The man nodded. Double quotes once. "And?" The man hesitated before answering. "The higher you go, the older the building becomes." Daniel felt a strange chill. "What does that mean?" The man spoke quietly. "Above the 13th floor, you start seeing the building before it looked like this." Daniel imagined it. Older apartments. Different hallways. Different people living there. But it doesn't stop there, the man added. Daniel looked at him. "The staircase keeps going even higher," the man continued. "Past the years when the building existed." Daniel's stomach tightened. "What's above that?" The man shook his head. "No one knows." "Daniel, turned toward the stairwell door again. For a moment he thought about climbing higher. Just one more floor. Just to see. But then something happened. The hallway lights flickered again, this time longer. The carpet on the floor suddenly looked burned. The walls darkened with smoke stains. The air smelled faintly like ash. For a moment, Daniel was standing in the building during the fire. Then the lights returned to normal. The hallway looked clean again. The man stepped back. The floors are shifting again, he said. Daniel understood what he meant. Staircase wasn't stable. It showed different moments, different versions of the building. And if he stayed too long, he might end up on a floor that never returned to the present. Daniel looked toward the stairs one last time. Then he shook his head. I think I'll go back down. The man smiled faintly. Good choice. Daniel walked through the stairwell door and began descending. The stairs below looked normal again. Clean concrete. Bright lights. Familiar floors. 12th floor. 11th. 10th. Finally, he reached the 6th floor. This time, the hallway door was exactly where it should be. Daniel stepped into the hallway and closed the stairwell door behind him. Everything felt normal again. Quiet. Safe. But before going inside his apartment, Daniel turned back toward the stairwell. From the other side of the door, he thought he heard footsteps. Slow. Careful. Climbing upward. Someone else exploring the staircase that went higher than the building.